past those premises to start with, or you wouldn't be in the room. But I also know from time to time you will cringe, and just know that, that's okay. So your master list is on pages 19 and 20. You also have a card, a goldenrod card in your bag that has the master list on it. So you can kind of keep that kind of to one side and help stay on track if you want to and not be flipping back and forth. So I'm going to start with something pretty elementary. So I'm on page 22. And the idea of the rapport bridge or the affinity bridge is an important idea because people make almost all their trust decisions, which trust allows for abdication of choice and abdication of responsibility, right? So how many of you, from somebody in your life, periodically get papers you need to sign, and they come to you with little yellow sticky arrows on them where you need to sign, and you sign them, and you put them in the envelope and send them back, and you don't read the documents? Raise your hands. Come on, and you'll learn more looking around at them than you will at me. Okay? See, not half as smart a group as I gave everybody credit for. Harry, you're an attorney. How many people do you send those documents to with little yellow sticky arrows on them, and you know they come back and they haven't read them, right? Why? Why would you do such a thing? Well, because we trust that person. And, of course, we don't want to read the damn documents. And we don't, quote, have time to read the damn documents. And in some cases, we might not understand what we read if we read them, which is even a greater argument for not signing them without reading them. But nonetheless, this is how, you saw the hands, this is how we all, we all behave with somebody. How many of you with more than one? Come on. So we abdicate authority. We abdicate. We don't delegate. We abdicate authority. We abdicate responsibility to people we trust. We do it all the time. How many of you get something done for you, business or personal, by a vendor that you have not price shopped, at least in a long time? Yeah, look. Okay. Why? Because you trust that person. You don't necessarily want the lowest price, but you trust them to be charging you a fair and a reasonable price. And you have actually now abdicated to them. So it happens all the time. And one of the ways that it happens with most people is what this FBI agent calls a rapport bridge. I sometimes call it an affinity bridge. And, of course, a little note you might make, multiple bridges are even better than one. So the Bernie Madoff case, one of the categories of people that he took a large sums of money from were rich Jewish people in New York, because he's a rich Jewish person in New York. And they all support the same charities. They're all at the same events. I asked Joan Rivers if she lost any money to Bernie, and she said no, because I already took that class. I don't invest in anything. I don't understand how the money's being made. She said, but everybody I know lost money to Bernie. And so these affinity bridges and these rapport bridges, when we create them, change the dynamic of how people respond to us. And And so that is an underlying thing. If you make that happen with somebody, immediately their natural and their habitual and their logical defenses start to go down. And there's 4 basic ways we do it. One is with empathetic statements. So, my pages, 12. So, I do this a lot, and I do it in copy. I do it orally. I do it one-to-one. In conversational settings, I like to get people to tell me about their pain so I can make empathetic statements back to them about their pain. Why? Because it builds an affinity bridge. If it's not conversational, then you have to integrate it into what you do. The more you integrate it in what you do, the more people are likely to abdicate to you. So, page 12 in the Ruthless Management book, the subhead is, so there's this, you've all seen it, but there's this thing, the conflicting agendas, right? So this is all the employees' agenda. Yours is just has one on it. How much profit can we produce today? On their list, that's number 15. It's down here at the bottom. All this other stuff on their minds when they come to work is taking care of the kids, holding their marriage together, planning for their vacation, planning for the upcoming weekend, planning for a night out with the girls or the guys, getting the bills paid, grocery shopping, finding out who Sue slept with over the weekend, who will win American Idol, social relationships at the office, who's a bitch, who's my friend, social activities at the office, lunch, football, pool, birthdays, somehow getting to work on time so I don't get fired, getting off work right on time or early if possible. 14, all the way down there, is compliance with the program. At 15 is how much profit can I produce for the company today. That's an empathetic statement, right? Because everybody gets it. The cartoon, I think it's on 18. So I get letters about this cartoon. But Dan, who will sign all our paychecks? And he's out, I'm out on the ledge ready to jump with a gun to my head, and they're all leaning out the window saying, but Dan, who will sign all our paychecks, right? I get letters. I blew it up. I put it on my wall. That's exactly. So the minute that happens, that person's defenses towards me weaken, and their trust in me, because I understand them, go up. And it's easy to do. You can train yourself to do it. The more you understand who it is you're dealing with, of course, the better you can do it. And you can't overdo it. So if you go through a book like that, 30% of it, if you take a highlighter now and you go through looking for empathetic statements with the owner of a business, and you yellow highlight every empathetic statement you could find, you're going to find roughly 30% of the book is empathetic statements. Next, affinity statements or symbols. Right? So affinity matters. It never should. It's a stupid way to make a decision about anybody or anything, but it matters enormously. Right? So if you are a Republican candidate for anything, it's a good idea to wear the flag pin. They notice if you're not wearing it. If you're a Democrat, you don't have to. And in some settings, it would be better if you didn't. A hammer and sickle will do fine. But But if you happen to be a Republican running for dog catcher, it's a good idea to wear the flag pin, right? And they notice if you're not. If you may recall, Obama got some crap over this early in his presidency. People noticed that he was not wearing an American flag pin. And then he wore it for quite a while. And I noticed the other day, it's not on the lapel again. So, you know, it's last year, F you. I'm doing what I want, which I understand, by the way. But very well. Yeah, they don't like me now. Just wait. We're going to have some real fun in the last 6 months, I promise you. But so affinity statements, I'm one of you somehow, and affinity symbols matter. Advocacy statements are slightly different than empathetic statements. So advocacy statements, this is one of the things Trump does so well. So advocacy statements are saying what they would love to say. But mostly won't. Standing up for some group against a rather ethereal opponent. So if you go through, if you take 3 issues, and you may pick any 3 you like of the newsletter. So if you do it currently, you have to do the Dan Kennedy pages in the middle of the No BS letter. If you want to go back before that and just get a No BS letter, it doesn't matter, by the way. I'm very consistent about this. And again, you take a highlighter pen and you go through and look for advocacy statements. Me standing up for somebody against a critical view of somebody else, right? You'll find them in every issue. You won't find me omitting them anywhere, and you will tend to find them done a lot. If you want a current reference, so if you go to your February issue, if you want to make a note, and go to Final Thoughts this month on page 16, it's a giant advocacy statement. It's a giant Trump rant on behalf of the little understood and unappreciated entrepreneur, which pretty much all entrepreneurs feel. They are underappreciated and put upon and odd men out and so forth. So the first time anybody ever talked about this to me, it was in a very elementary way, and yet I've never forgotten it or not used it. So on page 24, you have a thing, one of those wonderful acronyms that speakers love to use in seminar called FORM. And it's your template for a conversation with somebody. Because these are the 4 things in order that most people, not you, not us, many of us would have this scrambled. But most people, this is what they are into. And these are the things they talk about all the time, the things they like to talk about. First is family. Right? You don't have to, you meet somebody in line at Panera, and women do it more than guys, but now you don't have to go very far before they're showing you pictures on the phone of their ugly kids, and you have to not recoil at the sight, try not to ask Is that a boy or a girl? Is it human or is you see that's so family. Then the second thing they'll talk about is their occupation. If they're in business, they're more likely, but they'll talk about their occupation. It's like one of the top questions, right? What do you do? It's information people exchange with each other, right? And workers all use that language. What do you do? We kind of use the language of, oh, well, what business are you in, right? But it's the same thing. Then they'll go to recreation. So if they play golf, you're going to have a conversation about golf. If they bowl, you're going to have a conversation about bowling. If they bet, we're going to have a conversation about what team you bet on last night, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally is some conversation about money. Now that may be in the context of politics. It may be in the context of the economy. It may be personal. But that's what people tend to talk about. And it tends to be the order in which they talk about it. So this is what, and it's still taught, by the way, and it should be. So mostly if you join a multi-level, so if you join Amway, Shackley, Herbalife, etc., Mary Kay, which obviously Nick has signed up for, got a little thing on the side here, good for him. If you join any of them, you'll be taught this as the conversation template for strangers. And also you do it in this order in that context because you want to have built your affinity bridges before you get to trying to recruit somebody. So you build the family affinity bridge, you build the occupation affinity bridge, and you build the recreation affinity bridge before you finally get to talking about money. And the formula is always disclosure with some kind of declarative statement in response to them. Well, I have 5 kids. Let me show you their, Oh, well, so I have none, but my sister has 8. So some kind of a related question, a follow-up question, and a follow-up question if there's positive response. So if they want to talk about family, you stay there for a while. If they don't seem responsive to family, you move on and you ask a question about occupation. You will land with everybody in one of these. It's where they'll want to be. It's where they'll be comfortable engaging in conversation. You can also use, as I said, second-party affinity. Right? So if you don't match, somebody somehow can be used to give you a match. Right? What do? I own a bakery. Really? My grandfather had a bakery. Right? I mean, at worst, really, I love donuts. I mean, there's a second-party affinity, right, that gets you into this conversation. Now, what if we're not in a conversation? We're doing it somehow at a distance through media. You have to imagine the conversation. And you have to basically do both ends of it, but it's the same formula. So people will often say to me, when I'm writing copy for clients, it's like, why are we talking about all this irrelevant stuff? Where I grew up, how many brothers and sisters I had, my boat, why do I show cars, bring the cars? It's because of this, right? Because you get to build rapport bridges and affinity bridges with that stuff, right? So I have this wealth manager client. His name's Ted Oakley. I think third day I'll show you something of his. And so Ted focuses on people who built businesses and are selling them and are going to have 20 million or more in a bucket. And when I got Ted, it was about noon on the consulting day when I got to him telling me his life story. And it turns out he don't like telling it. And of course he thought it was irrelevant, right? And his life story is raised by grandparents, outhouse, no indoor plumbing, started selling stuff door to door to pay for his own clothes while he went to high school, first person in his family to ever go to college. He's the exact guy who now has $20 million in a bucket, who built it up. He got started one dry cleaner, then he opened the second. He's the Stanley's Millionaire Next Door guy, if you're familiar with that reference. That's Ted's client. And most of them are middle of the country, not coast. They're in the same town they started their business in. In many cases, they're living in the same house that they've had for 20 or 30 years. Most of them got the same wife they've had for 20 or 30 years. If he doesn't help them, that's likely to change now that they have $20 million in a bucket. But at the moment, they got the same spouse they've had for 20 or 30 years. They started selling shit door to door to make money. In many cases, they're the first person in their family to go to college. He's not using this at all. He's showing them pie charts and how we apportion the money and the XYZ formula that somehow tracks every time Buffett has indigestion. And so he's got all this stuff, right? I'm going, this is it. This is what we want to talk about, because it's right down my list, right? Builds a powerful affinity bridge, powerful. So these things really matter. We often think they don't matter, but they really matter. And they matter to most people a lot more than they should. So the critical thinker is absolutely right. So Ted is absolutely right when he thinks it shouldn't matter. If you're going to hand $20 million over to somebody to manage it, the fact that you and they were both raised by your grandparents and had to sell greeting cards to get money together to buy the suit you wore to the prom should have nothing to do with handing him $20 million of your money to manage. But it has everything to do with you handing him $20 million to manage. Now, the worst thing in his business is he's got a team of young'uns who work the prospect, of course. But ultimately, Ted's got to go see every one of them face to face before they hand over $20 million. Because that guy looks at him, looks at you, and goes, huh? Not a prayer, right? Ted is exactly what they expected. So they saw Ted on video, they read about Ted, and they're buying Ted's story. They're buying family affinity, background, they're buying all that stuff. Affinity bridges and rapport bridges are inordinately, unreasonably, in many cases stupidly important. So if you come to a consulting date with me, you're in my basement, and there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, it is a cluttered place. There's all kinds of stuff, objects, pictures, stuff that has nothing to do with my business or your business or why we're there. It's all so somebody can find something they have an affinity or rapport connection with. Because the minute they find it, we just moved this conversation along a lot. Wander around, take a look, hit the bookshelves, take a picture of anything you want, right? And we're into a forum conversation right after the bathroom break because they have found something. And it's either them, sometimes with harness racing, it's dad or grandpa, used to go to the track all the time and took them to the county fair, and And as soon as we're there, things change. I want to show the dog video. So also in this category, so family used to be just kids. Today, it's kids and pets. You are just as likely, particularly at Boomer and up, to have that person you meet in line at Starbucks showing you pictures of their pets on the phone than you are pictures of their kids. In fact, they're called pet parents, right? That's the new language, if you didn't know it. That is the new language. And so it's a rapport bridge. It's an affinity bridge. Animals work for that purpose as well. I'm going to show you, this is actually all done so I claim her for tax purposes. But, well, and actually this happened, so we just did a bunch of videos for Dr. Burleson. Where are you, Doc? Over there. For his Excellence in Orthodontics program. It's licensed to orthodontists all across the country. So we just did a bunch of marketing videos for their use. But I will give you the background on this. Some of you know this, but there is and I learned about it for the first time when I was doing the price strategy book with Jason Mars. There's coffee that sells for like $300 a pound, and it's made out of cat shit. I'm not kidding, in case you think I'm kidding. So they feed the coffee beans to the cat, and the cat poops them out the other end, and they turn this into coffee, and they sell it for this outrageous sum of money. Anybody know the name? The name's leaving. Huh? Civet. C-I-V-E-T, if you want to Google it. And so I assume there's this cat ranch. I assume it kind of looks like Purdue chickens, right? So there's all these cats in these little cubicles, and they feed them coffee beans, and like one of the worst jobs probably, and I'm sure it pays $8 an hour, so we got to pay him $15, is the guy who goes around and gathers up, the cat poop, I assume. But when I first heard it from Jason, I went upstairs and told Carla, we got to have a talk with this dog. Because, she is not earning her keep here. And, so we now make her earn her keep. So this is a video in the package of videos that orthodontists use to talk to their patients about various and sundry things. I'm just going to show you the first part of it.
Hi, I'm Jen here with This Is Lady. These days, a lot of empty nesters who have pets are called, and they call themselves, pet parents. If you haven't noticed, that is a favored language now of retailers, veterinarians, and others in the pet care industry. And you have to admit, this little child is adorable. Oh, you are so cute. Yes, you are. But you are a real parent of a human child, most likely a near teenager or teenager, and parenting those creatures is a lot more complicated than which flavor of kibble to buy and an annual flea.
Look at the face, first take. And no, we didn't smear ground beef on her. I forgot, actually, to tell you the truth, but I mean, first take, right? Magnificent, right? Every mom is going to go, ooh, particularly if they got a pet, right? It's like golden. So this stuff is far more powerful than most people give it credit for. And you got to think about your own inventory. This is one of the things I spend time doing with clients who are paying large dollars to be there. You can do it for yourself. You got to think about your inventory. What have I got? Leaving no stone unturned. What's in my background? What's in my family background? What is in all the occupations that I've been in? What's in that background? What's under recreation? What have I got? What do I do? What did I used to do? What do I want to do? What was I ever really good at? I don't know, you coached some little league team that won the state championship. That's on the inventory list of stuff you want to use. Right? And if you happen to have a critter, put them to work. And then tax deduct them. Oh yeah, another caveat. I'm not a CPA. So 4 and 5 seem to be in opposition to each other. They aren't. We'll talk about it. But there is power in transparency, and there's also power in intrigue. So the reason transparency works is that disclosure is, and the word is deliberate, disarming. So again, if you want to lower somebody's defenses towards you, disclose things to them. And so a lot of people worry about what they consider to be their negatives. I happen to believe you have no negatives. It's just how you use them. And so disclosure can be a very powerful thing. If you pay attention to Trump, and you should, whether you like him or not, so one of the things he did early, at the very beginning, that Romney was too dumb to do. So Romney tried to have you not notice the fact that he was loaded. He thought that was a negative. Therefore, he disclosed nothing about it until somebody else brought it out. You didn't know he had 15 houses until